And we're all going to take 3 deep breaths. As we exhale on the first breath, it's to quiet our mind. As you exhale on the second breath, it's to relax your body. And as you exhale on your third breath, follow that breath down into your heart space, the place within you where you know Spirit dwells. And for today, we're going to concentrate in the middle of your chest, the heart chakra. And imagine with me a green light of golden power and sunshine. Love is divine power. And let that green light of God's love fill every part of your being. Love is divine power. So let your green light of love from your heart expand. Let it go out from you as far as you can imagine. For your love is divine power. Imagine how your love, divine power, can transform not only you, but all the people around you. Let everyone in. Honor God's divine love and extend your love, divine power, to all people, to all sentient beings, to all the people who annoy you. For all people are a part of God's loving community. So take a deep breath and exhale and know that your love is divine power. And so it is. Amen.
Good morning. So good to see you here today. It's a story that has always been close to my heart that I think will really illustrate my message for this morning. There was a man, I never met him, but I was greatly influenced by his writings and his speaking. And he was part of a faith organization that was known for being pretty loud, boisterous, active, noisy, joyous, a lot of adjectives used to describe it. And they didn't have much of an association with the more traditional churches, liturgical churches. And he felt like that something should change there. Said for years, he felt like they'd been looking down their nose at each other, and he thought, I'm going to try and build a bridge in place of a barrier. I like building bridges, don't you? I think bridges are more worthwhile than barriers. But he decided to reach out to an organization that represented the more traditional churches called the World Council of Churches. And he made some initial contacts, some calls and arranged a meeting with their ruling council, and just expressed his desire, to build some bridges of understanding and have some, more association. And he got a question from one of the members, a question that he'd been dreading. And he said, the problem with me is it seems that you folks believe you have the truth and all us other churches don't. So how do you respond to that? And he said, boy, he dreaded that. Because he knew the way he answered that would probably determine whether this attempt of his to reach out was going to be of any value. He could give the wrong answer and sink it. And suddenly, as he was contemplating how to answer that question, he said he thought of his freezer at home, which seemed an odd thing to come to mind. He thought of his freezer, and when he did, he smiled. I thought, okay, I know how to answer this. He said, to respond to that, let me tell you about my freezer. Needless to say, the guy was puzzled. Said, I've got a freezer at home with some very fine Texas beef in it. Now, said, you could take one of the steaks out of my freezer, lay it on the table, and sure enough, it's beef, but it's thoroughly frozen. You could have it analyzed in a lab, and everybody would conclude that's beef. No doubt about it. But he said, something happens when I put that frozen beef on my hot grill at home on the patio. When my grandkids are visiting, suddenly that sizzle and that aroma begins to come forth, and the grandkids say, what is that? I want some of that. Said, the difference between us, he said, we both have the truth. The only difference, you have yours on ice, we have ours on fire. And amazingly enough, that went over well. I want to talk to you this morning about the sizzle and the steak. It was Elmer Wheeler. He was a pioneer in sales techniques from the 20th century. And he said something that's probably well known to most everyone here. He said, he told salesmen that he would train, said, you don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. And that's a tried and true technique. What does that mean? It means to place the emphasis on the emotional benefits of the product, the sizzle, and not the product itself, the steak. The steak is what the steak is. But you got to add the sizzle to make it appealing to people, to make them desire it. Because human nature, advertising understands this. That's why they spend jillions of dollars to appeal to us. They know that people buy based on experience and emotion. How am I going to feel if I drink this soda or if I eat this food? How am I going to feel? Is it going to make me happier? Is it going to make life better? Is it going to be fun? You sell the outcome or the meaning more than the product. We buy because what it will mean to us. Isn't that true? That's the sizzle. Give you the best example I know of adding the sizzle to a product is the insurance industry. Very few people get excited about insurance, except insurance people. Now, I don't know if anybody gets up in the morning. Have you heard anything new about insurance? I must know. Because it's not an exciting industry in and of itself. It's a product that is valuable, without a doubt, but not very exciting. That's why you've seen insurance companies come up with very innovative ways to market insurance. Some of the best, and Carol and I experienced this past week, somebody adding some sizzle to the product. I was passing by a car dealership, and I saw a really nice shiny Jeep with a sign that said 9882. 9882? What is this, 1982? It's the last time I remember you could buy anything for that. I get up there, and it says in small letters, the numbers were very big. In small letters, reduced 9882. But they added the sizzle, you see, that drew me in, and I quickly fled. But the insurance industry has found innovative ways to market their product. A great commercial I like, how many have watched the Limu Emu with Liberty Mutual? Love the emu. I like that most recent one where the emu runs out on the football field and the announcers, and somebody without pants has run onto the field. And this fellow announcer, do birds need pants? And it's just funny. But you think, what does that have to do with insurance? Practically nothing. But it's the sizzle that makes you, hey, if I buy insurance from Liberty Mutual, they're fun people. I'll have more fun. Or at least they want us to think that. And so we've seen the lemur emu, the Geico lizard, Flo from Progressive, and Jake from State Farm. And all these are insurance representatives designed to add some sizzle to a product that's not that exciting to most people. In fact, let me take an informal, unscientific poll. Who's a big fan? You're the biggest fan of the lemur emu? Very few. What about the Geico lizard? Several on the Geico lizard. How about Flo from Progressive? Not as many. Jake from State Farm. A few. So the Geico lizard wins again. He did in the early service. So that settles it. The Geico lizard is the best one. But we see all these characters, the emu, the lizard, Flo, Jake, all of them add some sizzle to the product of insurance and make us more prone to, hey, I want to go with that because I like the lizard or whatever, or whoever. But the sizzle applies to any endeavor, isn't that true? Selling a house, we hope that we're trying to add sizzle to our house, haven't we, dear, so we can move it. Come to our house. You'll be transformed to a new world, and your life will be full of joy. Whatever it takes. To sell a house, to sell a soda. Soda's soda. So you got to make, commercials, make it, you drink this soda, suddenly you're with the in crowd. You're a big shot. Refrigerators, whatever it may be. And it applies to unity. How many know we can add the sizzle to the good thing that we got? And in fact, studies show most people attend a spiritual community or a church service because somebody they know invited them and is excited about it. And so adding the sizzle, unity is a great thing, like the steak. It's great in and of itself. But we add the sizzle to it. Feel free to add all the sizzle you want about your handsome new minister. Feel free to do that. Feel free to add all the sizzle you want, about the various programs and ministries and wonderful things we got going on. We got great stuff here. Add the sizzle to it. Let people know, and they'll want that. You know who said something about the sizzle? Somebody you might have heard of it. It's something about sizzle. His name was Mr. Charles Fillmore, one of the founders of Unity. Listen to what he said about the sizzle. He said, he was 94 when he said this, bear in mind. He said, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. Charles Fillmore at 94. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm. If you can sizzle at 94, you're all right. Isn't that right? That's cool. To sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm. The sizzle is so important, isn't it, in making life sweeter and better and more fun and more enjoyable and more fulfilling. I remember I heard a story about the Sizzler in a particular town. There was a community of Buddhist monks there. And there was this fellow, he started meditating with them. He asked, could he join their meditation sessions? And the monk said, you're welcome to join us anytime. So he went every week. And one week they did something that they didn't normally do. One of the monks said, let's go out for lunch today. They didn't normally do that. And said, you can join us, the guy. He thought, Buddhist monks going out to lunch. I wonder where they go. It must be some vegetarian place in town they really like. Well, one of them said, let's go to the Sizzler. And he was puzzled. Well, I guess they have a great salad bar at the Sizzler. Well, so these Buddhist monks, shaved heads, robes, pile into a little car, go to the Sizzler. They pile out of the little car, eager to go into the Sizzler. And they sit down and they begin to order steak and chicken, which he finds puzzling and rather disturbing. And finally, he couldn't hold it any longer. He said, what is it with you guys? You follow the example of the Buddha, and you're ordering steak and chicken? I don't get it. And one of the monks stuck with his finger and said, not Buddha yet. And so, that can wait till after lunch, right? But they went to the Sizzler. They understood the value of sizzling. Now I submit to you, like in the story I told in the opening, unity, I believe, is truth on fire. It's not on ice. And it works on fire. It works with the sizzle. It works when we add the sizzle to it and let people know how precious, special, and wonderful it is. A path that will enhance their life, make their life better. And we know this depends on having the sizzle, and it depends on the presence of fire. Fire can be many things. We know fire certainly can be destructive. Fire can be purging. And fire, by its nature, is extremely attractive. Isn't that true? A fire's burning, you're automatically drawn to it. Not that you want to see anything burn or be destroyed. A campfire, I can sit and just be mesmerized. Why? There's something about the fire is a very attractive thing, isn't it? The founder of Methodism, the great John Wesley, he was asked once, how do you get people to come all the way out to these remote places in fields and forests to listen to you speak? He said, it's simple. He said, the Spirit sets me on fire and people come from all over to watch me burn. And how many of that's a valid principle? Isn't that true? When we're aflame, when we're sizzling, it's an attractive thing to people, isn't it? Og Mandino said in The Greatest Salesman in the World, part 2, said one of the vows of success in that book was, always will I bathe my days in the golden glow of enthusiasm. I like that, don't you? Always will I bathe my days in the golden glow of enthusiasm. Psalm 69:9 puts it this way. David said, it is the zeal of your house that has consumed me. The King James actually renders it, the zeal of your house has eaten me up, consumed me. I remember as a kid, I was a huge Star Trek fan. My cousins would say, do you live for Star Trek? You seem eat up with Star Trek. I was consumed. I was enthusiastic. But David said, the zeal of your house, being a part of the community of faith, being a part of what God is doing has consumed me. And it's possible to be consumed and just be attractive to people. Amen? You don't have to be consumed and, be a jerk or some kind of fanatic. Those people don't attract anybody. But to have that golden glow of enthusiasm, to be consumed with a sense of divine love and connection and a desire to let people know this has blessed my life and your life can be blessed too. That's the sizzle. Love the sizzle. But to have the sizzle, we must have fire. And there's 3 ingredients for fire. Does anybody remember the 3 ingredients from science class? Air, fuel. Excellent. Y'all are very good. There are 3 ingredients for fire. Oxygen or air, fuel, and heat. And we must have all 3 in order to really sizzle in our lives. Now let's look first of all at air or oxygen. And the ancient Greek word for air or breath is the Greek word pneuma, where we get the term pneumatic. And the same word, interestingly, the same word for the physical breathing is also the word used for spirit. Synonymous. There is a connection there between physical breath and spiritual development. The Sanskrit word prana means essentially the same thing. Breath, and it also means the vital essence of life. Taoist yoga cultivates the chi, or life force, through breath work. Dr. David Dillard Wright said, most traditional cultures around the world have accorded a great importance to the breath and endowed it with cosmic significance. Only in recent centuries have we come to view breathing as merely an exchange of gases. But how many know it's way more than that? There's a spiritual activity that connects with breathing that we don't. One of the Sanskrit words, pranayama, means breath work or many kinds of breath work. And David Dillard Wright said This involves breathing more deeply than normal, really taking it in, trying to lengthen inhalation and exhalation to twice the normal rate. Like Lark was leading us, in our meditation this morning. Some really mindful breathing, focused breathing. For example, to inhale and exhale twice the normal rate, not only in duration, but in volume, to take in more air. Let's take a big one right now. Little breath break. That's good. I encourage that. I encourage breathing. I encourage all kinds of breathing. Picture yourself breathing not only air, but also a hidden vital flow of energy. I remember I like martial arts. I like to train in martial arts, and I remember one day my instructor, I was heavily involved, punches, kicks, really moving, and he said, "Mickey, are you breathing?" I went, "What do you mean?" He said, "I don't think you're breathing. You're red in the face. You appear to be holding your breath while you're doing these moves." "Really? I didn't realize." He said, "Buddy, you're going to wear yourself way out faster than you have to if you don't learn to breathe through your movements." And he was right. I didn't realize that. Breathing can be something you got to focus on at times. Isn't that true? Oh, it comes so natural. Not all the time it don't. And I'm a perfect example of that. To breathing, and it applies, that's a great life lesson, because breathing through every aspect of our lives is extremely important. We must have the oxygen, the airflow, in order to have the fire. And so devoting ourselves daily to that and learning more and more about it is so important. I remember I tried a technique one time called fire breathing, and it's really intense. And rather tiring, but it's very good, very valuable. Many different ways we can do that. But the oxygen, the air, is important to have the fire and to have the sizzle. Second, fuel. How many know the statement, no fuel, no fire? That works the positive and the negative aspects, doesn't it? I've had people try to goad me into debates, around politics or whatever, and they'll wait for my response, and I give them none. Other than politely smiling. Isn't that something? I'm not being a jerk or a smart aleck. I'm just, I'm not going to give any fuel to that fire, because I know what they want to do is goad me into a discussion that's going to create some kind of rancor, and, got to prove, suddenly I got to prove how right I am and how wrong. I just don't have time for that. And generally I find it's rather counterproductive. A fellow asked me the other night about this controversial thing that came up, and he said, "Did you see that?" I said, "Nope." And you could feel the silence dripping like a wet towel, because I was giving him nothing. Nope. He finally gave up, because what are you going to do with that? No fuel, no fire, right? Right on the other hand, there are fuels that are valuable to burn. Isn't that true? The fuel of love, the fuel of encouragement, the fuel of enthusiasm. These are all good things to give people and to feed to one another. We can feed on good stuff, isn't that true? We can feed on Scripture, the Jewish Scriptures, the Christian Scriptures, the Buddhist Scriptures, books, films, music, songs. All these things are fuel that keep the fire burning in our hearts and lives. Someone has said, so many people in church, they feed their bodies 3 squares a day, but they feed their spirits only 1 cold snack a week. And I will endeavor never to just give you a cold snack. But it's still not enough. We need to feed regularly, daily. Isn't that true? I remember the president of the Bible college I attended, he had a really neat saying. When he was going, to spend time devotionally, studying Scripture, prayer, he would tell his wife, said, I'll be back later. I'm going to go feed my faith. I like that, don't you? We ought to take time to feed our faith. And that's the fuel that keeps the fire going and keeps that sizzling going. And finally, we need the heat. We need the heat. At times frequently we need to take our spiritual temperature. All of us got to ask ourselves, where am I? Where is my spiritual temperature? Am I retreating back into the freezer, or am I, remaining, ablaze with love, ablaze with enthusiasm for being connected with God and being connected with others? Heat is we take our temperature, and we recognize Interesting thing about cold is that cold in itself is not a thing. Cold is the absence of heat. Cold's not a force or in itself. It's not the presence of something, it's the absence of something. And in like manner, in unity, we believe there's one presence, one power, God the good. Isn't that true? No force of evil. Evil is simply the absence of good, just as cold is the absence of heat. And so we recognize when heat comes in, cold flees. When goodness comes in, evil flees. Isn't that true? There is no force involved. It's the absence of something significant and great. And so we recognize, take our spiritual temperature and recognize, where am I at? Am I a force, the power of heat coming in? Am I the power of goodness coming in to this world that can be dark and cold? And I can bring and make a difference in that. And we keep the fire going, don't we? Turn to your neighbor and say, keep the fire going. We encourage one another to keep the fire going in our lives. To have those ingredients where we fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm for all that we are called to do. Stand with me if you would. Let's make our affirmation in closing, if you'd be so kind. If you will repeat after me. Repeat after me if you would be so kind. I am a sizzler. I sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm. I have all the ingredients for fire. The divine flame draws goodness and blessing to me. Oh, that sounds pretty. Bless you. Have your seats. Thank you so much.